Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us. We're waiting for you to start. My name is Francisca Blanc. I am the Advocacy and Outreach Coordinator for Utah Housing Coalition. Utah Housing Coalition has been around since 1973. We are a statewide membership-based organization, and our members include every single organization that is today on the call, including the Salt Lake City as an institution. And we also have developers, banks, social services organizations that all care about affordable housing. Today, the National Low Income Housing Coalition released the 2020 Out of Reach report. They've been doing this for a number of years, and we asked our guests to speak about what's happening on the ground as far as affordable housing. We're gonna have Q&A at the end of the press conference, except for Mayor Mendenhall, because I think she's a pretty busy person at the moment with everything that's going on in the city. So I would like to welcome Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall.
Thank you, Francisca. It's great to see you all here today. And the news is not anything surprising for us, but we have greater details today thanks to the Out of Reach report that was jointly released by the National Low Income Housing Coalition and the Utah Housing Coalition. This year, the Out of Reach report is issued during a time when the coronavirus has so deeply impacted job security and housing across the country, and certainly here in Utah and Salt Lake City. Afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent in Utah, full-time workers need to earn $19.83 per hour. For Salt Lake County, the second most expensive area in the state, that wage increases to $22.62 an hour. But minimum wage in Utah is $7.25, and the average renter's wage today is $14.94. An individual would need to work 109 hours a week to afford a 2-bedroom home earning minimum wage. That's 2.7 full-time jobs. The federal minimum wage has remained at $7.25 an hour without an increase since 2009, not keeping pace with the high cost of rental housing. Prior to the pandemic, more than 7.7 million extremely low-income renters were spending more than half of their limited incomes on housing costs. Let me say that again. 7.7 million Americans, low-income renters, were spending more than half of their income on housing. They had to sacrifice other necessities to be able to do that. There are no states, no metropolitan areas, or zip codes in the country where renters can afford a home at fair market without spending more than 30% of his or her income on their housing costs. The report does not include in its calculations many of the additional fees that Utah's renters must pay monthly through their lease obligations. The additional fees range from $20 to $150 each, in which many cases they total $200 to $400 monthly payments to their landlord in addition to their rent. The time for housing support and for creating affordability, both through our workers' wages and housing costs, has never been more poignant. I'm grateful for these partners that we have who continuously and with, I know, love in their hearts and diligence for this work, keep moving this ball. We're with you. We will do what we can as a city to support your efforts financially and from the energy and momentum we can create as the capital city. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to you, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We really appreciate you, and we know that Salt Lake City, it is at the forefront of doing some positive changes through policy. I would like to ask the members of the media if they have any questions to make a comment in the chat box, and I can allow you to speak, which is kind of the way we do now through Zoom. If you have any questions for the mayor.
And Francisca, I can hang around until 9:45. in case
Okay,
anything comes up.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Patrice Dixon. She is with Utah Community Action, and Utah Community Action serves Salt Lake County and Tooele County. And Patrice, I will need you to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. So as has been mentioned, rapidly rising rents and the lack of affordable housing is creating a housing crisis in Salt Lake County. And Utah Community Action has 6 programs which provide needed assistance for low-income individuals, including rental assistance. And not only have we seen a large increase in the demand with the pandemic, which has resulted in loss of jobs and reduced wages, increased medical and childcare costs for many, but there's always that ongoing need for those who cannot maintain long-term stable housing, for the many low-income wage earners and those facing significant barriers to housing. The steady increases in rent impact all clients, but particularly those with fixed incomes. They are often not able to stay up with the payments and struggle to find affordable units that match their income. Of additional concern, once a lease runs out, we are seeing more landlords who are choosing to continue the leases on a month-to-month basis. This puts the tenant in a precarious position because they can be turned out of a unit within 30 days for another tenant who could pay a higher rent. Because of the scarcity of affordable units, even if a client avoids eviction or is termed out of a lease, they can often not find a unit of the same rate. And so we see them taking on leases which account for a much higher percentage of their income. Clients are also running into large waiting lists for low-income apartments due to the low vacancy rates, which have been below 4% for the past 4 to 5 years. On top of rising rents, as the mayor mentioned, we are seeing increases in fees, which impact the ability to make those rent payments. These fees include things such as parking fees, pet fees, lot fees for their mobile homes, application fees, holding fees, and initiation fees, late fees, internet and cable and water and sewer. All of these fees add up. It's where clients are paying an additional $125 to $150 a month, and sometimes up to $200 to $400 a month, which impacts, again, their ability to pay. For those who are currently homeless, deposit amounts have increased, which become another barrier to accessing housing. CARES Act funding and COVID-related funding are helping in the current crisis with those who have a crisis situation, but there's still a strong need for rental assistance for those who cannot keep up with the rising cost of rents while many are working 2 low-wage jobs. Many of these individuals are still working, some in essential services in the food service industry or hotel industry, where their pay does not meet that needed threshold to afford a unit. While income has only increased by approximately a 1% gain, rents have increased by 7 to 8% in the same time period, according to the Kim Gardner Institute. In a March 2019 Utah rent report, rents in Salt Lake City jumped 28.3% in the last 5 years, significantly higher than that wages for that period. We are seeing large numbers of families and individuals who cannot keep up and are seeking rental assistance. We thank Mayor Mendenhall in Salt Lake City for their proactive approach to housing and recognizing the need to address this housing crisis. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrice. We have a couple of questions from KSL News Radio from Dan. And I don't know if Mayor Mendenhall has an answer to his first question, but I know Salt Lake City is looking to change their zoning to accommodate more affordable housing.
Yeah, I'll answer the first part of that question. Then I think one of you technical experts probably has better information on the eviction piece of that question. Yes, Salt Lake City will be looking at policy changes to our zoning as it relates to affordable housing. And I'll mention 2 regards specifically, which are not new to this conversation. One is the geographic equity element of affordable housing, which we've been talking about for years now. The reality that it is harder to find affordable housing in high opportunity areas of Salt Lake City, and that's something we must begin to balance out. We have money on the table through our redevelopment agency to help developers offset the costs, the increased cost of property and development in areas of high opportunity. That money is sitting there on the table, $3.5 million of it. So that doesn't get to the zoning piece, and that's the second piece of what I'll address. We will be looking at the opportunities for inclusionary zoning along our tracks and our how do I put this, the reliable transit network as it exists today. Some of those could include the transit lines that Salt Lake City has bought up, which is 3 bus lines at this point, will be 4 by the end of the year, where we pay UTA to run those buses. And that's an assurance on the service that we at least can control as a city, where UTA can make changes to other service lines. So it's something that we're looking at. It's not yet going to the city council. There's not a transmittal just yet, but our planning department is looking into it.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We will answer the eviction question at the end of the press conference. And I will also email to all of the people who register the website where Salt Lake City is accepting public comment now on their proposed changes. I was looking for it a little bit earlier. I just can't find it right away, but I will find that and email it to everybody. Our next speaker is Michelle Flynn, Executive Director with the Road Home.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thanks to my panelists, my co-panelists here. One thing that we have an advantage of other communities. We started way ahead of the curve because of the close collaboration and work that we've been doing for many years around homelessness and housing issues, and that's reflected here with this panel. I want to just emphasize one thing before my remarks. The Road Home operates 2 homeless resource centers, one for families and one for single men. We also operate a number of housing programs. We have a team of housing navigators that works with landlords, works with all of our partners who are providing homeless services, individuals, men, women, families who are experiencing homelessness, whether they're out on the streets or in a homeless resource center. We've not seen any rent decreases. And this is unusual in an economic downturn, that we haven't seen a loosening of the rental market. And we are feeling that impact. I want to remind everybody the people who are experiencing homelessness are often affected by trauma throughout their lives. And this institutional and community level, the effects of COVID-19 and how that has trickled down to people who are already living in unstable situations continues. And so the effect is not just on the actual housing, but on people's mental health and support, and the work that we do is so essential in that sense. Because of the underlying health issues with people experiencing homelessness, people who are living in homelessness and contract the coronavirus, COVID-19, are twice as likely to be hospitalized, 2 to 4 times more likely to require critical care, and 2 to 3 times more likely to die than others in the general public. What we've seen here in Salt Lake is this strong collaboration to ensure that we are working across the system and putting preventive measures in place. We have gotten a really good handle on the spread within our facilities. And people who are experiencing homelessness are working hard to prevent the spread themselves, wearing masks, doing all of those types of things. But housing is healthcare. And for people that don't have health insurance, who are living unstably and from place to place in homeless shelters and out on the streets, who don't have access to healthcare, are much more at risk. Our individuals and families that we have living in our resource centers are often working, and they're working in those essential jobs in the community. They're taking public transportation. And so this population is so essential that we ensure that we can help people move quickly back into their own homes and not stay living in homelessness for any longer than necessary. And again, with our new system, we are emphasizing what Patrice talked about, which is really the prevention and diversion. So people don't even end up in the homelessness system. But once they do, we need to make sure that we can have a flow out back into the community, and that there is a place that's affordable. Patrice also mentioned we have people with disabilities who are on set incomes, veterans who are on set incomes. The average Social Security payment that we see is $783 a month. And that's just not sufficient to meet the needs in the community. We've been working on many solutions, including shared housing opportunities, so it's more affordable when two people share a home. But as I mentioned, the units aren't there, and we want to make sure that the rental assistance that has come through the CARES Act and our partners at the state, the city, and the county continues to flow to the people who are the lowest incomes, and continues to flow to those landlords. Many of the units that people who are experiencing homelessness move into are owned by small landlords who just have a few units, and they need that rent income to keep their business going as well. And so we want to just emphasize the need for that ongoing support, and really taking this opportunity to look how we are addressing homelessness in our community and take another leap forward and reduce people who are living in congregate shelters, identifying alternate spaces, such as the Salt Lake County Stay Safe, Stay Home Motel program, really looking at housing as the solution to avoid congregate settings and help people stay healthy. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Our next speaker is Tara Rollins, Executive Director of Utah Housing Coalition.
First of all, I'd like to thank the members that we have speaking today. You've been doing some incredible work, out in our communities. And I just want to say that we have other members that are doing amazing things throughout the state. I think the Salt Lake City has been leading out for the last few years, and it's just, the momentum is just gaining and gaining. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of the type of programs that are coming out of Salt Lake City, especially, I learned of one yesterday about the Section 8 assurance program that is working. I mean, that's just amazing. So to talk about the Out of Reach report, I have been doing this press conference now for 15 years. And I remember doing the very first one on 2nd West and I think it was 925 South, and in our old office. And the issues are the same 15 years later. People cannot afford the rent. We really need to start having a conversation about the jobs that we have on the ground and what they're paying. These are jobs that we need. Right now, we are seeing people that are not qualifying for this COVID-19 funding because they are working. These are the people that are in our grocery stores, the stockers of the grocery stores, the people in our medical centers. Low-wage jobs are everywhere. They're in our, especially right now, they're depending on people to go into nursing homes, the CNAs, to, take care of, our elderly. And they're the lowest paid people. These are the people that we depend on. Why aren't we paying them a wage that they can afford to live in our community? Many of us have been privileged through COVID-19 and been able to, work from home. Many are not. They've lost their jobs. They're trying to, find jobs, but they also need to find daycare for their children. Daycare is not accessible right now to many. And so people are unable to work as well. Housing is more than just a shelter. During this pandemic, it's, we've been depending on our housing for our health, to stay healthy. We're depending on it for education, to teach our children during the school year. We've been depending upon it for employment. Many people are working from home and they're depending on their housing. But right now, people can't afford their housing. And we're going to see, once the moratorium ends, once the extra funding from unemployment ends, we're going to see an uptick when it comes to eviction. Sadly, landlords need to also get paid, and, they have bills to pay, etc. But at the same time, we need to have some flexibility. If somebody is starting to work, why can't we do a payment plan? I think, other things I worry about is if school does not open in the fall, if we don't start behaving and making sure that others are safe, children are not going to be able to learn. we don't have, people are now doubling up, tripling up. There's not enough electronics in that particular household to be able to educate, the children. And so I just wanted to, point out that rent is high, but these fees that landlords are charging are also extremely high. And so somebody is going into signing a lease and with a deficit in their budget. They're already set up to fail. They're already paying, 30%, 40, 50, 60% of their income to housing. And all it takes is one hiccup for them not to be able to pay rent. I beg landlords to be a little bit more lenient on fees, late charges, work with tenants. We need these tenants for our community. We need them to be able to, continue to go to work, so we continue to be able to go grocery shopping. I just want to thank everybody, for participating today. I appreciate the press, continuing to try to get the message out that, housing is unreachable for many of our community members, and that we can make a difference if we all work together. I mean, we are making a difference in some of these cities. Progress is slow, but we need to continue. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tara. We are now opening for questions. I'm going to start from the top. So my apologies. Dan from KSL News Radio, I can try to let you speak. So Dan, if you want to ask your questions, go ahead.
Well, to our last speaker, to Tara, I was interested, you say for families who are doubling up or tripling up in their homes, not enough electronics, the home internet connection is not available. So even if schools are providing terminal equipment, the laptops or Chromebooks or whatever, the opportunity for kids to do remote learning is much more difficult than for other families.
That is very correct. I've heard of some cities, making sure that the libraries continue to have their internet connected so people can go to the library outside and use that connection. I've also heard that schools are doing the same, but when you have 4 kids in a car, trying to, teach may be fun in the beginning, but it gets old fast. And so I think we should really take an inventory with our schools to find out if kids do have access to electronic, devices, because, we have large families here, and, every child deserves, a chance to learn. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Can I add something onto that? I just want to thank the Canyon School District for providing Chromebooks for all the children that are in the Midvale Family Resource Center. But I want to remind people that it's really hard to follow along with school and do homework when you're living in a congregate shelter facility. So again, even when the equipment's there, getting families out into an affordable housing unit is really the solution.
And a lot of our affordable housing now is coming with internet, and that people are not having to pay extra, fees for that. It goes with their rent.
The next question, thank you, Dan. Next question is from Emily from KUER. Emily, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thank you so much for your time. So I'm wondering if you've seen renters experience any difficulty having these conversations with their landlords, trying to put together a payment plan or whatever it may be. What kind of challenges have renters run into in working that out with their landlords? And what would you suggest they do to approach that conversation and have a successful outcome?
So I can speak to that a little, and then Tara maybe can add if she'd like. So Utah Community Action has a landlord-tenant mediator program. We've seen a significant increase in calls with people trying to mediate and work with their landlords, and some landlords have been extremely receptive and willing to work with clients, and then we have others who have not. Some of the challenges that we're seeing is that they are now, instead of evicting, a lot of them are charging collection fees. And so we're adding those collection fees now on top of the rent and the arrears that people are facing. And so when those eviction moratoriums end, I think we're going to see a significant increase in people being evicted. Our landlord-tenant mediator works with landlords. We've been able to negotiate down quite a few of the fees, as well as working with them with any evictions and court costs. I think the challenge is, obviously, we would recommend that the tenant talks to the landlord, tries to work out a payment plan, is proactive, doesn't wait until they're in real trouble and there are already court costs or collection fees, that they go and be proactive and reach out to their landlord and try and work out a payment plan. But we do also have mediation services available to help with that process if needed.
Can I add a follow-up? Is that all right?
Sure.
So you're referring to the federal eviction moratorium, right? For federal housing?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But the state's eviction moratorium ended, what, a month and a half ago, something like that. How have we seen an uptick in evictions since then? And would you maybe hope that we see another statewide eviction moratorium, as things play out, if we see things get worse, or what?
Yeah, we have not seen an uptick from that with the state eviction moratorium ending. And right now, I think landlords still have been willing to work because of the COVID crisis. We also have COVID funds available through the CARES Act that we provide rental assistance for clients who are in need, where we can help them with arrears and also rental payments. And we also have utility assistance available, and not only ongoing utility assistance that we can provide to help catch that up as well. So I think right now a lot of the CARES Act funding has met that gap, filled that barrier. We're hoping that can continue. I do know that we are seeing a large uptick in people who are working with their landlords and having difficulty. And so I think it's just a call for everybody to be on board with tenants reaching out to landlords proactively. There's a great housing toolkit that the Utah Housing Coalition has provided for tenants that they can access. Reach out for the landlords to work with us to help keep the people in their apartments and lower all these fees that are adding on to the rental costs. And so I think it's all of us working together on the problem.
This is Tara. I would just like to add a couple things. We feel that people were paying their rent because they also received the stimulus checks. They received additional funding for the children that was, helpful, but also the unemployment, they were receiving, $600 extra a week. So people were able to maintain paying their rent. So evictions are down, I would say, but with all the subsidies that are changing, from the CARES Act, meaning, no more stimulus checks and no more additional funding through unemployment, that is when we're going to see the problem rise. And so I see one of the issues too is the fact that most landlords will not take a partial payment. And so what happens is you get the 3-day pay or vacate, and then what happens is it's 24% on top of that. Most leases charge interest. And so somebody who only owes $400 going into the problem, by the end of it, they can owe owe almost $5,000. And so for somebody to turn around and be able to get another rental unit, that in itself is extremely difficult. And I'm sure Michelle could speak to this as well, because, you know, last winter, we actually asked the Road Home to do just a brief survey of how many people had been evicted that was in the shelter. And I think it was 95% of them had been. So how do we rehouse people, you know, if they have eviction on their record? So how can we really slow the flow of evictions down and make sure that landlords are held whole to the rent? But the additional fees, I mean, one of the fees I don't understand is, isn't it kind of part of doing business, paying your property tax? You know, renters are now being charged for property tax in their leases. I mean, that's crazy to me. Michelle, did you want to add anything?
I would just say, I mean, what's clear is that it's a lot better for people to be able to afford a safe place to stay in their own home. It's better for the landlord, it's better for the family, it's better for the community to provide rental assistance if needed, to help develop more affordable units in our community. And it will prevent so many ongoing issues that are quite preventable. We know that they are, if we can keep people safely housed in affordable units.
Yeah. You know, and I might mention that, as Tara said, the supplemental unemployment and the stimulus payments are being spent and gone. Another thing is the utility companies who were not giving 3-day notices for payment to shut off utilities. That is also ending in July. And so people who are behind on their utilities, again, that's now going to come due, and they're going to find that they can't meet those expenses. So I think there's a lot of things contributing to it where people had some funding and support at the first, and some of that is ending. And so again, if they will reach out to their landlords and to their nonprofit partners that can help, I think they need to be proactive.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to add one more thing on what Tara was saying earlier. So based on the 2020 Out of Reach report that the National Low Income Housing Coalition did, 90% of Utah's workers cannot afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment. They just don't make $19.83 an hour, if I remember exactly the amount. But you have to remember that the report does not take in consideration the additional fees. There is no way to track those fees. A lot of times they're not even advertised when the apartments go for sale. And Utah has a large number of small property owners, and a lot of landlords are very, they respect the tenants. They're charging a decent rent. They advertise the apartment for rent as the actual cost of the rent. But we have seen many places that have additional fees, monthly fees added to the month. So let's say the rent is $950. On top of that, you have entertainment fee, which can be $50. You have valet trash fee, meaning somebody will come at your door and take your trash out and pay $20. Parking fee, and you have to pay it even if you don't have a car, even if you don't want cable, and the list goes on and on and on. So in reality, we have way more than 90% of our workers not being able to afford housing.
So just to tag on what Francesca has said, think about, you know, us. I mean, think about if all of a sudden my budget is changing, I'm going to stop my telephone. I'm going to stop my cable. You know, I have choices that I can make. A lot of renters are backed into a corner and have to pay those extra fees. And just like Francesca said, and people are able to pay their rent, but they're being evicted based on the fees. You know, we're seeing that with Mediator. She has indicated that she's seen several of those. So
Thank you so much, everybody. If members of the press have additional questions, you can put them in the chat box. If you don't, you can always reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the panelists. So I'm not seeing, excuse me, I'm not seeing any more comments. So we will end our press conference. We will make it available on our Facebook and YouTube page. And for the members of the media, if you email me, I can send you a link to the Google Drive so you can have access to a better version of the video. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for the panelists, including Mayor Mendenhall. Have a good day and be safe.